Hello, my friends. It is Wednesday, and I have two guests on today's show, both of which joined me live last night on youtube.com/standupwithpete. If you want to jump to my guest interviews with Michael Cohen and then Colby Hall, you can do that right now. They begin at 47 minutes into today's show. But basically, it's like two shows in one. Every day, I've got your headlines and a clip show, a whole bunch of sound bites from the day before, and then I've got a great guest interview. Today, I've got two great guests. I'm so curious about everything that's happening. I'm so passionate about trying to create change and opportunities in the world. I want to know what to do all the time, and I want to be able to follow it every day, and it matters a great deal to me. I've been trying to fight apathy for my entire career, and I'll continue to do that, which is why I have to talk to these people that I do each and every day for the podcast. And so I hope that you appreciate it. If you do, sign up for a paid subscription at patreon.com/Pete Dominic. If you don't, email me and come over to my house. We'll sit down and have dinner. We'll break bread, and then maybe I can convince you to care about these things, this show, and support it. For all of those of you who do, thank you so much for joining me and being a part of our community. I'll host a hangout tomorrow night and 2 nights a week, 8 p.m. every week, unless I can't, which sometimes I can't because I'm a human being with a life. And so thank you very much for all of your support. Let's get to those headlines right now, and I've got a whole bunch of clips as well. Of course, yesterday, shit is getting real. It is getting worse, and it's hard to watch. You know, this joke has become trite and cliche, but it's only Tuesday, and it's been a very long week, Stephen Colbert said last night on CBS, but that does feel that way every week. And seeing these protests and Trump militarizing the streets is a very hard thing to see. Knowing that there's going to be a military parade with all the classic military parade stuff this weekend is a very hard thing. And so these are new things. Yesterday, the president went to a military base, and he basically got people, the members of the military, to cheer for all of the worst things, including Robert E. Lee. That seemed like a pretty new thing to see, the military cheering the Mad King and rooting for the type of chaos and violence that he is bringing us on fairly regular basis. So with all of that being said and acknowledged, I want to get to some of the headlines from yesterday. All right, here are things that are not directly related to the immigration crackdowns, deportations, abductions, and arson that Trump has created in California specifically. Of course, you may have heard about the horrific school shooting in Austria. At least 11 people were killed, several others injured in the school shooting in Tuesday in the southern Austrian city of Graz. A spokesperson for the regional hospital said that 11 people died following the incident at a secondary school located in the northwest of the city. Apparently, the shooter himself killed himself, and the motive was that he was being bullied. And it's not that hard to get a gun in Austria, apparently, but they don't have the types of guns that we have. But you can buy. He had a pistol and a rifle. Horrific news out of Austria. Yesterday, we got a few rulings that I want to mention, court rulings. And one, it's President Trump apparently has acted unlawfully when he issued an executive order applying an 18th century law to alleged Venezuelan gang members to expedite their removal from the United States, according to a federal judge in Texas on Monday. A case that matters out of Georgia. Well, the state election board exceeded its authority, apparently, by passing new voting rules last year. The Georgia Supreme Court unanimously ruled Tuesday, limiting the Republican-led board's power. The 96-page decision upholds a lower court decision that invalidated rules that would have required hand counts of ballots and election inquiries. So I think that's good. How about this? File it under difficult diplomacy. Iran said that Monday it will soon hand a counterproposal for a nuclear deal to the United States in response to a U.S. offer that Tehran deems, quote, unacceptable, while our Mad King said talks will continue. He also made clear that the two sides remained at odds over whether the country should be allowed to continue enriching uranium on Iranian soil. So, I'm sure you could take his word for it. What about this? Will the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ever be what it once was? Steve Bannon at Maddow Blog, who is just really one of the best daily writers, says that Kara Peterson, the acting head of enforcement for Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, quit on Tuesday after sending a fiery email to her department denouncing the Trump regime's efforts to gut the watchdog agency, which protects all of us, was created as a result of the financial crisis of 2008. So that I thought was interesting and important. And the fight over a forced reset is triggering a very big deal. Okay, so a coalition of Democratic-led states filed a lawsuit Monday challenging the Trump administration's reversal of a Biden-era effort to curb the spread of devices that turn semi-automatic rifles into makeshift machine guns. The lawsuit, filed by 15 states in the District of Columbia and federal court in Maryland, federal district court in Maryland, came after the Trump administration abandoned legal efforts to stop distribution of the devices and agreed to return thousands of the devices the government had seized. Wow, I didn't know that last detail, so that's worth mentioning. Very important story that should. They're going to return the devices. They really want the wrong people, the bad people, to have the bad weapons. Let's see. What else do I have for you? What's this? Oh, it's the World Bank's projections that the economy here in America is going to slow sharply this year as Trump's trade policy disrupts international commerce. The World Bank said it's going from I think 2.4 to 1.8% or something. It's massive. It matters. And it's it's because Trump steps on his own dick all the time, or ours, I guess. In New Jersey, voters headed to the polls in primary elections for governor, and the winner was Mikey Sherrill, which is important for reasons that I think matter, that J.L. Cohen now has a lane to run if she's leaving that seat open. So I'm very excited that he's going to do it. I hope he does it. And we'll see. We'll talk to him very soon if he hasn't announced anything already. ABC News suspended correspondent Terry Moran for a social media post about the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller. And now the ABC said, well, he's not going to return. They were not renewing his contract. So talk about that with my guests coming up. Michael Bloomberg is announced that he's backing Andrew Cuomo for mayor, even though Cuomo has been accused by a dozen women of some kind of sexual harassment charges, and he's just a terribly corrupt and awful person. Anyway, there's that. That election is coming up soon, in a week or two, I think. The 24th, actually, of June, I believe it is, the primary election in New York City. In Gaza, the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, called for Hamas to lay down its weapons and free the remaining hostages and cease its rule of the territory. Is that a first? I haven't followed that closely what he said or how much power he has left, Mahmoud Abbas. Let's see. In education, Yale's endowment, Yale University, has been trying to offload one of the largest portfolios of private equity investments ever in a single sale because they're uncertain about federal funding, which is a really interesting and important development. Apparently, Meta, Facebook and Instagram and everything else, they're preparing to unveil an AI lab dedicated to a hypothetical system that exceeds the powers of the human brain. Interesting. The world's most popular TikToker is named Colby Lame. He was detained and forced out of the U.S. after ICE claimed he overstayed his visa. I've never heard of him. I don't know. I'm not familiar with his work, so I guess I will become familiar pretty soon. All right, those are the headlines that I've got from yesterday. I'm sure there are more. I'm sure I missed plenty. Feel free to tell me anything that is undercovered, that needs to be covered. Email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. But now it's time to get to the clip show. I've got a whole bunch of clips from yesterday. I'm going to start with about a 9-minute clip from the governor of California, who gave an address last night, an emergency address, Gavin Newsom, and he is really stepping up. And right after this almost 9-minute address, you'll hear a California TikToker. I don't know who he is, but he absolutely nails what and who Gavin Newsom is and what he's doing, I think, in a very accurate way. So you're going to want to hear that. If you want to jump ahead after this, it's about 9 minutes. I highly recommend you stay here and listen to Gavin Newsom as I am. All right, here it is. Gavin Newsom, take it away. Last night around, I think, 8 p.m.
I want to say a few words about the events of the last few days. This past weekend, federal agents conducted large-scale workplace raids in and around Los Angeles. Those raids continue as I speak. California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, But instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested, a 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different. What then ensued was the use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces. Not in L.A., not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? I ask everyone, take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear. But I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
Wow. How about that? Is Gavin Newsom the leader we need in California right now? One could argue the answer is yes, based on how he is reacting in real time in every way to everything that is happening, as opposed to sitting on his hands and putting on a statement later, which is a lot of what a lot of Democratic leaders are known to do. Well, here is random TikToker from California who knows Newsom well and describes it using kind of terms that people might relate to. I'm not familiar with these actresses that he references necessarily, actor and actress, but I get the point. And I thought this was really helpful and good and very smart, so I'm sharing it.
I want to explain Gavin Newsom to people that are not from California. Gavin Newsom is as if like Regina George and Patrick Bateman from American Psycho had a baby. Like, progressives do not like his policies on the homeless, or even really immigration, and he's been like pushing further right, whether it's for like a maybe possible bid for the presidency or just to appease, moderates or trying to court conservatives. He is a child of like Regina George and Patrick Bateman because he has that like look in his eye. Because as much as he kind of has this disdain for progressive ideals, he fucking hates Republicans and conservatives so much more. Like, hunting Republicans and conservatives to Gavin Newsom, like, it's sport to him. So, like, if Republicans start coming for California, like, Gavin is gonna put on his fucking suit and tie, baby. He's gonna slick back that hair with the gel. He's going to beat that mug and he's going to go to work because he is like that popular kid with a rich father. And so this is like a popular bully in high school. And when like a new principal comes into town, but the principal is like a piece of shit. And the popular bully is like, no, this is my fucking domain, bitch. Like my dad owns this town and I'm going to get you the fuck out of here. And so we're going to go see Gavin now go hunting. So we're all not like fully like, yay, Gavin, but we're like, oh, thank God he's like on our side right now in this moment.
Yeah, I like that because people want to say that they don't like a certain politician or a certain person because of something that they did or are actively doing right now. But people are complicated and nuanced, and we need right now more than anything else to be pragmatic and accept people and leaders for all of their mistakes, their sins, their transgressions that have offended us, the things that they said or done, because we need to be on board against tyranny, against fascism. We need to be together against fascism, and anybody that wants to sign up for that project right now should be on our side. All right, that's my little rant. And I almost forgot, but let's go to Kevin Richburg, who every day has the most important story in the country. Take it away, Kevin.
The only story that matters is that President Trump lives in a world of total delusion and fantasy, divorced from a recognizable reality. And no person with such an extreme mental condition is fit to be president. Trump justified his actions in deploying the military on American soil by asserting that if not for his obviously inflammatory behavior, Los Angeles would be completely obliterated. The only story that matters is that Donald Trump is so addicted to hyperbole, so obscene and so obviously fantastical that it divorces him entirely from reality. You are not fit to be president of the United States if your entire worldview is based in make-believe.
There you go. Kevin Richburg. That's one smart farmer, huh? We love him. And we're all going to get together in September 5th through 7th at his farm. You should come to Farm Jam. It's going to be a fun 3-day retreat. We're going to have a great time. And if you want more details about it, look at today or any day's shows notes where there's a link to the description of the events. And it's basically free. You know, anybody can come if they're a paid subscriber. We'll vet you. Don't worry. Make sure that we know anybody that's coming. We don't want any riffraff. It's going to be a great time. All right, now let's head to more clips. I think this is great. I think Keith Boykin should win some kind of journalism award for these Instagram reels that he is posting. You should definitely follow him. But this is a kind of a fun explainer. These are from California, from Los Angeles, where he lives. Take it away, Keith.
Trump says that if it weren't for him sending in the Marines and the National Guard, Los Angeles would be on fire right now.
If we didn't get involved, right now, Los Angeles would be burning. Los Angeles right now would be on fire.
Well, I live in L.A., and I'm here to tell you that's a lie. I'm in downtown Los Angeles, which feels like a normal business day here, except for the helicopters flying above. But actually, that happens every day here anyway. But there's no sign of fire here. I'm at Los Angeles City Hall, where Mayor Karen Bass has been trying to fight Trump's lies and misinformation. But still, no sign of fire here. I'm at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles, where members of Congress were denied entry this week. But still, no sign of fire here. I'm here at the Federal Building in Los Angeles, the site of the protests for the past week, and still, no sign of fire. A few National Guardsmen, helicopters flying above, and a handful of protesters, but no fire. I'm here in Hollywood, where there's no sign of fire here. I've been covering these anti-ICE protests for 4 straight days here in L.A. outside the Federal Building. I've seen people from all walks of life, and 95% of the protesters have been peaceful. The only incident I saw was on one day on one block where 5 Waymo cars were set on fire. But other than that, the only fire I've seen in Los Angeles this week is Donald Trump's pants.
Oh. Keith Boykin, very good. And here's another one. He did two yesterday, and I wanted to share this one with you as well because he talks about something that is going undercovered as a result of all the chaos created by our arsonist in chief. Another update from Keith Boykin in the streets.
With all the coverage of the LA ICE raids and protests the past few days, you may have missed the news that Trump's new travel ban went into effect, blocking travel to the U.S. from 8 black countries. In total, 12 countries are banned, but 7 of them are in Africa: Chad, the Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan. And the 8th is Haiti. Trump's immigration policy doesn't just target Hispanics, it targets black people as well. One of the victims is 6-year-old Brad Mertens Joseph, a Haitian boy born with a birth defect, whose family had scheduled open heart surgery for him at a hospital in Akron, Ohio. But that little boy's dreams were crushed by Trump's new executive order. The order also partially restricts the entry of people from 3 other African countries, Burundi, Sierra Leone, and Togo, and it bans travel from Afghanistan, Myanmar, Iran, and Yemen, and restricts travel from Cuba, Laos, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. Remember, Trump has always had a thing for Haiti. In February, he ended legal protection for 500,000 Haitians who were living illegally in the U.S. Last year, he spread a lie that Haitian immigrants were eating their neighbors' cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. And in his first term in office, he referred to Haiti as a country. And we know he's had a thing against Africa, too. Last year, he spread lies that the Congo released criminals into the U.S. He spent nearly 6 years falsely suggesting that President Obama was born in Kenya. In 2014, he called to ban travel from all countries in West Africa to the U.S. because of 2 Ebola cases. And he was the only president since Ronald Reagan never to visit Africa during his term in office. If you're a white person coming from South Africa, Trump will roll out the MAGA red carpet for you. But if you're a 6-year-old kid from Haiti or one of the nearly 5 million black immigrants in the U.S., Trump is coming for you, too.
Yeah, Keith Boykin, that was great because that is an undercovered issue. And so I wanted to make sure we did something here on that. Now, Bernie Sanders is just, I mean, he breaks the rules about aging politicians. The guy is as sharp and vivacious, I think, as he's ever been. I would add that he's radiant. I don't know why I'm using words like vivacious and radiant to describe Bernie Sanders, but I'm sticking to it. He made this, I thought, really effective statement yesterday from his office that I wanted to share with you. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont.
I want to take a moment to address what's going on in Los Angeles right now. Let's be clear. Trump's deployment of the National Guard and Marines in California is not about the protests. It is not about ICE. And it's really not about immigration. It's about using extremely dubious legal authority to expand his never-ending grasp for more power and his effort to move this country toward authoritarianism. This is a president, as you all know, who has usurped the constitutional responsibilities of Congress. He has threatened to impeach judges who rule against his policies. He has and is suing media for coverage that criticizes him. He has extorted money from law firms that have represented his opponents, and he is withholding funds from universities for teaching courses he doesn't like. In terms of what's happening in Los Angeles, let us understand that in our federalist form of government, local, state, federal, it is the governor of a state who deploys the National Guard, not the president of the United States. Trump's argument for his deployment of the troops is absurd and laughable. Does anyone really believe that we are in the midst of a foreign invasion or a rebellion against the United States? That, believe it or not, is his legal argument. Let's take stock of what Trump has done here. He has conducted massive illegal raids. He has provoked a counter-response, and then he has called in the troops. That is how an authoritarian rules. In this unprecedented moment in modern American history, it is imperative that all of us, no matter what our political views may be, stand together against the president who has little respect for the rule of law or our Constitution. The future of American democracy is at stake. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Sanders, for your courage and your wisdom. All right, well, you know the story about ABC News, Terry Moran. I talked with Colby Hall about it coming up, but actually Colby and I talked yesterday right before the news broke that ABC decided not to renew him or to let him go. I thought this was great from Jim Acosta, former CNN White House correspondent and anchor. I thought this was so poignant and thoughtful and dead on about who Stephen Miller is and very sincere. So I wanted to share this with you from Jim Acosta.
Somebody who has been in Stephen Miller's crosshairs, as somebody who's gone toe-to-toe with Stephen Miller. I did it back in August of 2017 in the White House briefing room when he and I went round and round over the meaning of the Statue of Liberty, when he tried to whitewash the meaning of the Statue of Liberty with white supremacist talking points. That was when I learned what Stephen Miller was all about. They would swear up and down inside the White House that Stephen was not all about that. But he came after me with language that, as it turned out, was very incendiary. He was saying that I had a cosmopolitan bias. These are things that white supremacist websites were using to go after their targets back in the day. Kind of convenient there that Stephen Miller would use the same kind of language. Anyway, the fact that he went after me in that fashion, the fact that he has been Trump's main propagandist on the issue of immigration and demonizing immigrants ever since Trump started running for the White House, accusing migrants of being part of an invasion in this country and so on. I mean, that kind of language comes from somebody who hates, somebody who has hate in their heart. And I have to say, when I saw Terry Moran's tweet over the weekend, and again, I don't mean to insert myself into this situation, but people want to know what I think Terry hit the nail on the head. I think Terry was stating things exactly right. And maybe he felt because he was working for a big news organization that he had to take that tweet down, or perhaps they told him to take it down. I don't know what the circumstances are. But what he was saying in that tweet was true. I believe Stephen Miller, based on my experience covering him, has hate in his heart. I think it's what drives him. I think it's what drives his aggressive posture inside the White House when he lashes out at officials inside the administration that their mass deportation numbers are not high enough. I don't like to think that about another human being, and there aren't many human beings in the world that I think that about. But I do believe that at the end of the day, in the final analysis, Stephen Miller, you have hate in your heart. Donald Trump, you have hate in your heart. When you have hate in your heart, you have no business being in charge of this country. You have no business being the commander-in-chief of this country. You have no business being the president of the United States of this country. What Terry Moran said was true. And that's what people in the press should be doing right now, without worrying about the consequences, without fear or favor. They should be telling you, the American people, the truth, what's at the heart of the matter. And what we're seeing driving the situation to the brink in Los Angeles tonight is hate. Hate in the hearts of some of the people who run this country.
All right. There you go, Jim Acosta. I thought that was awesome. And I think this is really good, too. This is the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. I saw this and wanted to share it because I thought it was a masterclass in how to answer these questions from some gotcha interviewer in local television, I think, out there.
Here, I want to go back to Senator Webb. Does she have a point, though? Has the Democratic Party, at least some, alienated some rural Kentuckians?
Well, I certainly hope that rural Kentuckians would be alienated by a $300 million cut in food that's going to make more rural Kentuckians go hungry.
I don't think that's the controversy,
though. 17 million people that are going to be cut from their health care, including in rural Kentucky. So you can say, has the National Democratic Party alienated folks, but look at what the National Republican Party is trying to do right now. It's going to hurt people. It's going to cost lives. And I hope that the Senate on both sides rejects it.
I believe she's probably referencing more of the social issues, though. Do you think she has a point there?
But don't you think if she's just referencing a national Democratic Party, she should also have to reckon with what the National Republican Party is doing? Listen, social issues may be important to you, but the ability to see a doctor, how much you make in your job and the impact of tariffs, whether or not when you're down on your luck you'll have enough to eat, I'd like to think that those are the core values that we should be putting first.
That outweighs some of the other issues in most voters' minds.
It should.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. We're really well done by the governor of Kentucky there, Andy Beshear. And now let me go to a guy who is a former MAGA. He's former MAGA. There's a whole channel dedicated to this on, I think, Instagram. And he was a J6 insurrectionist, and he was arrested and sentenced. And he has left MAGA, and I thought it was interesting, and so I thought I'd share this, and you can share these with your current MAGA friends if you think it's going to make any difference at all, which it probably won't.
Hello, my name is Jason, and I left MAGA. I supported Trump because I enjoyed antagonizing people. I feared responsibility. My alcoholism, which became a physical addiction, fueled obsessive behavior. This lack of rational thought prompted me to attend the Stop the Steal rally, where a violent riot broke out and we all competed for Trump's attention with a violent vengeance. The government held me accountable for my actions before I was ready. During my rehabilitation, I finally put the bottle down and was better able to understand the consequences of my actions. It was these actions that contributed to the horrific attack on the Capitol Police and resulted in the deaths of Officer Brian Sidnick, Officer Jeffrey Smith, and Officer Howard Liebengood. It was in their memory and the memory of former Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt that I refused Trump's pardon, because the pardon was both egregious and dishonest. Nothing about January 6th was pardonable. Unity contradicts Trump's lies. Thank you.
Yeah, well done. I thought that was really interesting. And here's Manu Raju, CNN, with a throng of other reporters asking the current Speaker of the House, Christian nationalist Mike Johnson, to compare the January 6th protests, arrests, and pardons to what Trump is doing in California. And this is real good. Well, the questions are not the answer.
I'm glad the president has a strong hand in
Mr.
this.
Speaker, you guys are condemning the violent protesters in LA. Is it hypocritical given the president pardoned the violent protesters on January 6th?
Look, no, I think there's a clear distinction between those two. We've seen what's happened in LA in the early 90s and in other times when these things get out of control and they burn whole city blocks down and shut the place down. You have to stay on top of that. You cannot let it get out of control. And I think federalizing the National Guard was important. I think if Marines are necessary to maintain order, we have to do what is.
But what's the difference? You said there's a distinct. What's the difference between the violent protesters and January 6th?
Everybody wants me to relitigate January 6th. I'm not going to do that. There's a very clear distinction between the two. The people who broke the law and destroyed property met with the proper consequences on that. That's what we're trying to be intellectually consistent about this.
What sort of authorities do you think the Marines should have there on the ground? What sort of authorities?
Maintain peace and protect property. They're protecting federal property and personnel, and that is a very appropriate and necessary thing to do, and I applaud the president for doing it.
Ugh, he is so bad. He's such a baddie, one of the bad ones for sure. Very few people should be, I think, indicted for upholding fascism than that guy right there. All right, one of my favorite commentators in all of politics happens to also, of course, be a comedian. It's Jon Stewart, The Daily Show. And he had that dum-dum Stephen A. Smith on his show, which, I don't know, maybe he did it just so he could explain things to him, because Stephen A. Smith doesn't ever really talk to or debate smart progressives. He talks to people outside of politics. He talks to right-wingers. He talks to, I don't know, what the people at The View. I'm not saying that they aren't smart. So I forgive me. Maybe he does sometimes, but I thought it was great to hear Jon Stewart lecture him. And it's mostly just Jon Stewart here making the argument that Stephen A. Smith hasn't considered, but at the end goes, no, you make sense. You're right. Thank you.
He allowed what people would consider to be a centrist, old guard Democrat to run again for president, and then you say the progressive left wing is the one that didn't. They didn't choose Joe Biden. They don't have the power in that party. Chuck Schumer is out there, writing 8 strongly worded questions to Donald Trump about getting. The progressives are the one going, people in this country want Medicare for all. do something. They're the ones that have a principled agenda that they are going to put forth that all the Democrats have run from in under the guise of we have to be moderate and we have to be centrist. But that doesn't appeal to changing the culture and dynamic of how this government should work by the people, for the people, of the people.
That's a great argument, and I don't disagree. What I'm saying to you is that
we're done here.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, let's get to some comedy, shall we? Those are all the clips that I've got for you. Here it is. Last night, Jimmy Kimmel was on fire last night on ABC, and you will hear some of Trump's voice in this clip as he jokes around it. So trigger alert. It's getting harder than ever before to hear this asshole say anything, but it's worth it to hear. I think it's worth it to hear Kimmel's jokes. So here it is.
Still with it. Does anyone believe this? He might be starting to convince himself. That did not happen. He so desperately wants to be the hero putting out fires. Putting out a fire you purposely start doesn't make you a firefighter. It makes you an arsonist with a hose. Okay? It's so nuts. The President of the United States has been tougher on L.A. than on Russia. Remember that 2-week deadline he gave Putin to sit down for peace talks with Ukraine? As of tomorrow, it's 2 weeks. But by all means, send the Marines to the Grove. This is an unstable person. I mean, listen to this guy.
They say we're a forest nation. We live in a forest, and they don't have forest fires. And in one case, he said, our trees are much more flammable than California. But we don't have forest fires because we clean the floor, we sweep the floor of leaves. California is a disaster, what they've done in California. They don't do anything. And if you did, you almost would not have forest fires. And you could say in theory, you shouldn't have any forest fires. And we spend billions and billions of dollars a year because people don't clean the forests. And we're going to clean the forests. We're going to start cleaning them.
Yeah, that's right. Any day now he's going to send in a squadron of Roombas to clean it up. He's cleaning the forest. The guy can't even keep the clumps of hair out of his shower drain. And now he's cleaning the forest. And to be fair, some of the protesters broke the law. They're throwing water bottles. 3 Waymos, these driverless cars, got set on fire, which is ironic because the MAGA crowd thinks immigrants are here to steal our jobs. But if you're a driver for Uber or Lyft, you know the real threat is Waymo. Trump lies about everything, a lot of stuff. But it's especially maddening when he's lying about a situation you are physically in. I mean, everyone in this room right now knows none of these doomsday scenarios the president and his minions keep imagining aloud it's not remotely true. There are no mobs. There's no violent insurrection. There are Americans who are upset, marching to protect their neighbors, no matter what this sick person says.
These are paid insurrectionists or agitators or troublemakers. You can call it whatever you want. But these are paid insurrectionists, and these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. These are paid troublemakers. But these are paid people in many cases. They get money. They're paid.
See, in that little mind, that sticky little brain covered with Aquanet, they would have to be paid because why would anyone ever do anything without being paid? Right, Melania? I mean, that's how he thinks. Look,
yeah, I love it. I love how hard Jimmy Kimmel sticks it to Trump. I mean, he goes right for all of the best and worst, and I think it's great. Colbert, I feel like, holds back these days. I don't know. I mean, it's funny, but it's not always as harsh, but that's just my opinion on selective listening. Anyway, here is Stephen Colbert at CBS Late Show last night.
If you're keeping track, the running tally of reasons for Trump's big boom boom parade are Flag Day, 250th Army anniversary, and also, for some reason, winning World War II 80 years ago.
We're the only country that didn't celebrate the victory, and we're the one that won the war. Okay, if it wasn't for us, that war, you would be speaking German right now, okay? We won the war, and you might be speaking Japanese, too. I mean, you might be speaking a combination of both.
Yes. No, it's so true. It's so true. A combination. You'd be speaking Deutsch-Panese. You would. You'd all be saying, domo arigato, Mr. Lederhosen, for folding my schnitzel into a beautiful origami crane. That's what you'd be saying. That's not me. That's history.
Wow.
Oh, actually, according to the Secretary of the Army, there's another reason for the parade. It's to offer a chance to tell the public about the Army. Well, thank goodness. Because without this parade, the American people would have no awareness of any of our military branches. Unless they watch before a football game, during a football game, the football game post-show, or if they live in Los Angeles, California. Because this is day four of Donald Trump's war on anyone who didn't vote for him. We taped this at about 6 o'clock, so I don't know if we're in a full-blown civil war yet, but if, just in case our country has split into two opposing forces, I call shots. Okay? Now, as we speak, Trump has sent thousands of troops into downtown L.A. to quell what historians will remember as the battle of that video of a burning Waymo car they kept showing on cable news. Now, there has been some rock throwing by protesters at ICE vehicles, but MAGA Twitter has reported many more shocking incidents, like this video, which claimed to show protesters firing from the ground at a National Guard jet. Only one problem, the footage from a video game called Arma 3. Okay, they also posted disturbing footage of an Italian immigrant running around murdering turtles. Authorities. Wow. Yeah. Just wrong. Authorities also warned he could be high on mushrooms. So how do we get here? Well, remember how Trump promised to round up all the violent gang members and Hannibal Lecters roaming our streets, like during the campaign? Turns out there aren't that many of them. And Stephen Miller wants to deport much more than 1 million undocumented immigrants per year. So, a few weeks back, he screamed at ICE agents, "What do you mean you're going after criminals? Why aren't you at Home Depot? Why aren't you at 7-Eleven? That's right. Those 7-Eleven workers are dangerous because they have access to biological weapons like the roller hot dog." Can't be good. that is just a fly merry-go-round is what that is.
All right, there you go. Colbert last night on the CBS Late Show. And now it's time to get to my guests. I got two of them on today's show. Coming up, Colby Hall, who is of Mediaite, and we go through some of his latest work, which I really liked. I enjoyed that conversation. But right now, I've got Michael Cohen of truthandcons.substack.com. Of course, Michael is a former columnist for the Boston Globe. He is a fellow now senior fellow and co-director of the Afghanistan Assumptions Project at the Center for Strategic Studies at the Fletcher School, Tufts University. He also writes for MSNBC.com and more. The author of 3 books. And I'm very happy to have Michael joining me whenever he gets to. We were talking yesterday live on YouTube, but if you missed it, here's our conversation right now. Michael Cohen in Brooklyn is my guest, joining me live, and I'm very happy to see you've been writing some great things over at Truth and Consequences, and I know you're ramping up for the president's birthday party.
Yep, having a big party this weekend to celebrate.
What is the significance of all of that military gear going down the road streets of Washington, D.C.? Is it really going to tear up the street? That seems...
Yeah, apparently a big part of the budget for this parade is to repair the streets after these tanks, roll over them.
Will anybody care that Trump spent, I don't know, it doesn't matter how much money, I guess, on a parade, and that the parade tore up the streets of D.C., besides the people of D.C.?
The tear up the streets part, probably not so much. I actually think this is kind of not the best political moment for the president because... Look, I mean, part of the reason to have this celebration is the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, but it's also coinciding with Trump's birthday, and that, I think that's getting a lot of the publicity around it. And it is like a $50 million is being spent on this, which is kind of an insane thing, especially when you've got people working inside the government trying to cut employees and cut spending programs and claim we're spending too much money on things and they're spending money on a parade. That is in part meant to honor the president. You're going to have like national airports going to be shut down for a couple of hours. I don't think it's a huge win for Trump. I think it just makes him look like look, for supporters, they're going to love it. But I think for a lot of other people, it's just going to look like this is just an ego-driven exercise, which it pretty much is.
Let me ask you about last week before we get to this week. Last week, at the end of the week, Elon Musk broke up with Donald Trump, as we knew he would, and he nuked him. He really nuked him with the Epstein post, and then it seems to have like kind of disappeared, which is so hard to believe. It's hard to believe that thing disappeared, or that the Qatari plane disappeared, or any number of things. But this one is especially, and it's because of Los Angeles and what's happening there. What do you make of the idea that a lot of people are saying he's just doing this now as a distraction from the big bad bill and the Elon Musk breakup?
Yeah, I mean, I just hate these arguments. If there's one thing we should have learned about Donald Trump and the people around him over the past, 10 years, it's that he's an idiot and he's surrounded by idiots who the idea that they could manufacture a crisis to distract is just absurd. And, this particular situation with these ICE raids in Los Angeles has been going on for quite a while now, purposely being directed at, I think, in blue states in order to inflame blue state governors in order to create this kind of conflict. And I think that part of it also driving this is that they're not able to find enough people to deport, right? They're not hitting their mass deportation numbers. And because of that, they're, looking for as many illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants as they can find. So they're going to like Home Depots and 7-Elevens and things like that. So I think this was not intentional that they created this crisis. I think it happened. And of course, when these crises occur, Trump is so impulsive and he overreacts to everything that I think when there was these demonstrations, the immediate thought was, well, let's call in the military. Let's double down on this. Let's get tough with these guys. It's a nail. We got to bring out the hammer. I don't think that's a winning political stance. And I think it's also just something that demonstrates an impulsive reaction to this violence that broke out in Los Angeles. There's not some big conspiracy or great plan going on. These people are not that smart. And if you see one thing about Donald Trump, it's that he is a completely reactive person, right? He's always impulsively reacting to things, and that's what ends up driving a lot of this behavior. So, no, there's not some great plan here. It's just more stupidity from the dumbest White House in American history.
You wrote in your recent piece about this, saying they're not that smart. I think that's what it was titled. You said, when I see people suggest that Trump is laying the groundwork for martial law or the imposition of a police state, I wonder where you've been in the past 10 years. I got a lot of listeners who say that. A lot of smart people say he's laying the groundwork for martial law.
I just think it's ridiculous. I don't think they, first of all, I don't even know what that means, to be honest. They're not declaring martial law. It's not a thing in America. I don't even know how that would end up materializing. And again, I think it just gives these guys way more credit than they deserve and assumes a level of deliberation and planning and strategic thought that we have never seen from Donald Trump or from anyone around him over the past 10 years. So I just think it's silly, frankly.
Will the violence in Los Angeles help Donald Trump politically? That's another.
So I wrote,
question.
That was another thing too. So there was an argument that he was going to help him, right? From pundits who were like, "Oh, it's immigrants. They're waving Mexican flags and there's violence. That's going to help Donald Trump." And my thought on this was like, well, I mean, does anybody just remember what happened in 2020 when the George Floyd protest occurred? Right? I mean, Trump's approval ratings were at one of the lowest points of his entire presidency. And part of that's because of how he handled it, but part of that's because people don't like violence on American streets. And they tend to blame the party in power when that happens. The content of demonstrations is much less important than the fact that these are actually occurring and people's cars are being lit on fire and people are waving flags and throwing rocks at police. That doesn't lead to more support for the incumbent president. It leads to less support. And that's what we've seen. The polls today suggest that people are not supportive of what Trump is doing in Los Angeles. They don't support sending the Marines. And by the way, that reaction is not the kind of thing that people are going to respond to positively. They don't want, even if they agreed with the need to quell this violence, even if they hated the protesters, people don't want to see, Marines on the streets of Los Angeles. That's not something that Americans are desperate to have happen. And when that happens, if it does happen, and so far it hasn't happened, we'll see if it does, they're not going to like it because it suggests that the country's falling apart, and people don't like that. People don't like disorder. They don't like disorder.
You could pick any number of things that have created tremendous, maybe irreparable damage, loss of life, like the U.S. cuts to AID, but you can't see that. There aren't images of that. There are images coming out of LA, and those images, I would argue, are as a result of the images that people all over the world have seen of people being snatched off the street, arrested at their workplaces and so on. Like, there's cause for people to be in the streets, but as a result of it, people are in the streets, and you see what is happening. That imagery creates conversation. It goes on TikTok. It goes everywhere. It leaks into places that aren't known for politics. So much of it then becomes manufactured and so on. You're talking about the result of the reaction to those images, basically, and people don't like it.
Well, I think they don't like the images of violence. I think they also don't like when that happens, though, the inclination is to not necessarily rally around the president. It's to actually blame the president. It's to say, this is the guy who's responsible for keeping order in the country, and he's not doing it. And I think if you look at historically, this is consistently how this plays out in American politics. I go back to, I wrote a book on the 1968 election. People blamed Lyndon Johnson. They blamed Hubert Humphrey for the violence and the riots that took place then. In 1992, when there was the LA riots, which were significantly, exponentially worse than what's happening right now, people were blaming George H.W. Bush for it. I think it's just a misreading. And I think it's this lazy conventional wisdom assumption that, well, if left-wing protesters are protesting and and they're waving Mexican flags, that automatically is going to help the right and going to help the president. I don't think that's true, actually. In fact, I would just say for the record, this was happening if Biden was president. I think it would hurt Biden also. It would hurt whoever is the incumbent president. I don't think this is something that people view positively. And, I think the people who think that this is going to be a negative assume that Americans pay way more attention to this stuff than they do. What they see is maybe a few snippets on the news or on their Facebook page or wherever it may be, and they say, this is bad, I don't like this. And I don't know that they're necessarily going to sit around and say, well, it must be a left's fault. I think people on the MAGA side will. But I think a lot of ordinary Americans who don't really get that engaged in politics are going to say, this is Trump's fault. Let's be honest about it. It is Trump's fault. And a lot of people on the left, I think they look at this and they say, this is definitely Trump's fault because he's ramping up these raids and deporting people who have not committed a crime and who are peaceful and law abiding. Look, I think there's a general take out there that immigration is a net positive for Trump. And on some levels it is, if you look at it from a 30,000-foot level.
Yeah.
But if you dig into it, what you'll see is that deporting people who haven't committed crimes, this Kilmar Garcia who was deported to El Salvador, that whole episode really hurt Trump's numbers because people didn't like that. He didn't get due process. He didn't commit any crime. The thing that helped him the most, it would seem, is that he was a union steelworker, and his white Boston union brothers you gotta free Kilmar, it was. The guy did nothing. The guy really, and he played by the rules too. He was checking in with ICE, doing all the things he's supposed to do, and all of a sudden he gets deported. He's got 2 kids, 3 kids, all of whom have developmental issues. It's.
To be fair, that one Boston guy that made the video, I think he thought it was Nomar that got deported. That's who I was thinking of. It's free normal. Is it Kilmer? Isn't he yeah, people don't like it. They don't like to see what they're doing. Why weren't people, Michael, in the streets when Joe Biden was president? Why are people in the streets now? There's your binary.
Well, they're in the streets now because Trump is engaging in this horrific mass deportation that has affected people's lives, and people don't like it, and so they're protesting. That is something that I just think. Look, a general point I'm going to make here, I think, is that political protests or demonstrations, for whatever reason, ignore the content. If those kinds of things are happening, people don't like it, and they're much more inclined to blame the incumbent president.
It's true. If you want to take all the passion and points out of political protest, that's the absolute conclusion I think you gotta draw. The person in charge, whether it's the mayor or the governor, gets blamed for not managing this better, for not quelling this. Exactly. In this case, it was like far fewer people than came out after like Philadelphia wins the World Series and doing far less damage. And then he sends in like SEAL Team 6, who's not trained to deal with this. And then it just all looks bad. Like he's pouring so much more fuel on the flames that were already burning. Sorry for the California.
Let me tell you something to that point, that a celebration in Philadelphia for a sporting event victory is like 1,000 times more dangerous than anything we saw in Los Angeles. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. Those people are crazy. You wouldn't want to be involved in that. I would much rather be at the demonstrations in LA than being with the Eagles fans in Philly. Are you kidding me? It's not even close.
In the live chat, Benny makes a good point. He says the Israeli-Palestine protests hurt Biden and Harris a lot.
I don't know if they hurt a lot. I don't think they helped. I think that there's definitely some truth to that. I don't think they helped at all. And I think when people see disorder in the country, that's a good point, by the way. I think that is a good example, a good counterpoint.
Well, I said people weren't in the streets, so importantly, I was wrong. They were in the streets, but it was about
there was some of it, I think. But I just think in general, people don't like disorder, and they don't like the sense that like things are falling apart and that there's violence. And I think one thing that the Trump people don't really understand is that sending in the Marines might play with the MAGA base, and it might make them, it might help get them off. But I don't think it's something that people really, in general, really like. And so I think that they're overreaching here in a pretty big way.
Yeah. My prediction, and I already kind of came true, and I don't make a lot of predictions, and when I do, I'm always wrong. Although I did say Kilmar Abrego Garcia would be coming back. That's like the only one I've gotten right in 100. But is that you're going to start seeing images of Marines, and you can't tell the difference, by the way, between Marines, National Guard, sometimes in some police because of the uniforms, and they don't always wear labels. But you're going to see them sitting around doing nothing because there's nothing to do.
Happening.
And you're already seeing that. And now they're making hay of it. Democrats are making hay of it by questioning the Secretary of Defense today. How come these Marines aren't being fed? There's reports they don't have water. They don't have beds. Like, did you prepare for anything? And the argument being that they're just being used as a prop. And they themselves got to be thinking that. Who wants to get like deployed against their fellow Americans and then not do anything?
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, I think this is a major miscalculation by the White House, and I think it's one that's going to probably hurt more than help. I mean, more along the margins. Not like it's a catastrophic political hit, but I don't think it's going to help anything. I think it also just it sort of bolsters this narrative that Trump has brought chaos and disorder and division and rancor to the country. I think that was a big problem for him in his first term. And I think I always tell people this, that, before that his numbers before the pandemic and then at the election in November were basically the same. The pandemic didn't really change people's views over dramatically toward Trump. People were already kind of sick of the guy. And I think part of the reason was because it was just this never ending drama with Trump. And this is a guy who basically like feeds on drama, like the way you and I feed on oxygen. He needs conflict and he needs drama. And I think that people get tired of it. And we're only, 5 months into this presidency? And it's every friggin' day is more drama, more crises, more scandals, more stupidity, more just things people don't want. And so, I think that all this stuff just adds to this feeling of like, what's this guy doing? Can you just step back and we're not thinking about you for a couple of days, a couple of weeks?
Can't do it. It's got to be there every day, and it's got to be a worse piece of shit every day too. And you wrote a piece for MSNBC last week. It is Pride Month. Should be mentioned as I mentioned this piece. It's titled "The Bigotry at the Heart of Pete Hegseth's Navy Ship Renaming, Stripping the USNS Harvey Milk of its namesake during Pride Month is the Trump administration's way of sending a very specific message." This is a big and important deal, and I was very upset about this kind of thing. I thought a lot about Harvey Milk. I thought a lot about naming ships and what it takes and what it means and what it might mean to anyone serving. But you wrote a pretty thoughtful and important piece about it. Go ahead. Why is this important?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, it's a complete FU to the LGBT community, right? I mean, they did it intentionally during Pride Month. So that's the first thing.
Specifically, the LGBT community serving actively, much less veterans, in the military. Like, it damages morale. It's no doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But there's this is part of a pattern of just diminishing contributions of sort of non-white female members of the military, right? I mean, he's fired about, I think it's 5 female generals, commanders, generals.
The Secretary of the Navy was a woman who worked her way all the way up, captain of a ship, commander of a fleet, Secretary of Navy.
Admiral, I should have said, but yes, exactly. And then taking anything that references the accomplishments of Black, female, Hispanic members of the armed services. And his argument, they want to create this merit-based colorblind system. But what they're really doing is saying that if you're white and male, we're going to honor you. And if you're not, you probably just got attention or got ahead because you're a minority and you didn't really deserve it. And so we're going to diminish that. And that's kind of what's been happening. I mean, the Harvey Milk thing is just a dick move, if I'm being honest about it. But it's part of this larger assault on the idea that diversity exists in the military. That diversity is something we should be cognizant of. That it's worth even referencing the accomplishments of people like Jackie Robinson, that was in the U.S. Army, or Medgar Evers, a civil rights leader, was murdered who was in the military, or Harvey Milk, who was in the Navy and was dishonorably discharged because he was gay, which we now think we agree was wrong. Well, Pete Hegseth doesn't, but other people do. And I think that it's a gross attack on the idea of diversity, and it coming in an institution that is ironically, one of the most diverse institutions in American society and has been. The Army segregated before Major League Baseball. No, maybe it was the same time. Well, around the same time. But it segregated, desegregated, years before Brown versus Board of Education. The military has been ahead of the curve on a lot of this. And the idea that we're not going to acknowledge that tradition in the Army, which is, by the way, one of the great things about the military, right? That you have all these diverse individuals from really disparate backgrounds coming together under the same flag and under the same system, same institution. It's a wonderful thing, and he is basically diminishing it. And so if I was a gay service member, if I was a woman, if I was Black, if I was Hispanic, I would just feel like this guy doesn't give a shit about me, and he doesn't. I mean, that their view would be correct. So it's all, I think, it's very sad and very unfortunate, and just emblematic of just what a disaster Hegseth has been so far as Secretary of Defense.
Last thing I want to ask you, Michael, and you've written about everything I've asked you at your great Substack, truthandconsequences.substack.com, truthandcons.substack.com. Go subscribe right now. But it would seem that there are a lot of things happening that are obfuscating or taking time away, at least in media coverage, from the bill that was passed out of the House, now making its way through the Senate. And I'm not sure how much it matters. We could talk about the attention being paid to it or not, but you wrote a piece about the bill itself and your thoughts on it and how it's going to come out. Not to mention the fact that I just think it's interesting that Elon Musk is so overtly outspoken about the specific problem that it creates more debt and deficit. It's abominable. You've got certainly Republicans in the House and Senate saying that type of a thing. If you want to cut the debt and deficit, this is not it. But what are your thoughts about the bill, the politics, and the likelihood that it gets passed before July 4th, which is the goal, I guess?
So first of all, the lack of attention, I think it's not that surprising. People don't pay attention to legislative stuff like this. And I think I think that attention has been paid to it. I think it's been pretty negative. I think it's actually hurt Republicans. I mean, I think Joni Ernst put that ridiculous comment that she made about
everybody's going to die.
We're all going to die. I think actually has put that race, which I think was probably a likely Republican, they would keep the seat. I think it's actually put that race in play. I'm not saying she's going to lose, but if I was a Democrat in Iowa, I think a couple have already announced they're going to challenge
my friend Zach Walz, who's a senator in Iowa, is running.
Yeah, so I do think that she has I think that's already causing some pain. So the thing that I'm not clear on is I don't know how this thing actually passes. And I'll say this. I was very surprised that the House bill passed. And it was clear that it passed because Speaker Johnson said to his Republican colleagues, we have to get something passed, and Trump wants it passed. And that happened. But then immediately you see these regrets. I mean, even Marjorie Taylor Greene saying she hadn't read the bill, and she would have voted against because of certain provisions in there. So I think that, that was surprising. It's much tougher in the Senate. And it's tougher for a variety of reasons. One is you've got some senators who I don't think are going to support Medicaid cuts, people like Josh Hawley, although I'm sure I wouldn't be shocked if he backed down on that. You get some other folks too. I mean, Rand Paul is going to vote against it no matter what because of the increase in the deficit. But you have to do this to get 50 votes. To get it to pass, you have to go through this reconciliation process, which means it has to be somewhat revenue neutral. You can't put extraneous provisions in the bill, which can be thrown out by the parliamentarian. So it's really difficult. And then you're going to have to pass something that'll go back to the House. The House voted for this because they're like, well, it's going to get rewritten anyway, so we'll just move the process along. But when it comes back to them, they actually have to vote on the final bill. And I think there's real tension in the Republican caucus about this, about deficit hawks, among people who don't want these big Medicaid cuts. So I don't know how it's going to play out, but I'll be honest with you, I assume something will pass because it kind of has to from the Republican perspective. They want to extend the tax cuts. But what it's going to look like, I have no idea. I don't think anyone does. And I'll just say one more thing about this. I mean, what's sort of fascinating about this whole situation, I saw Johnson on ABC This Week, and John Carl asked him, doesn't the bill add deficit? And he said no, which is just like an almost Orwellian lie. Of course it adds deficit. It adds like $3 trillion deficit. Now, Carl corrected him, but, I think sort of meekly. I mean, there has to be some pushback from reporters to point out that Republicans are consistently, from Trump on down, consistently lying about what's in this bill. They're lying and saying it doesn't add deficit. It does. They're lying and say it doesn't have Medicaid cuts. It does. It's really hard to deal with a political party that just lies brazenly. Yeah. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah, they always do. And about these,
they always do. This is actually more extreme than I think I've ever seen before.
Well, I mean,
I really am being serious. This is more.
They've always said that tax cuts don't create deficits because they grow the tax base, so people pay more in taxes as a result of their tax cuts. It's always been,
which of course never happens. Of course, never happens.
Of course, it does. I mean, like, not in a state, not in the country, not in any country. I don't think ever.
Never happens. And then also on the Medicaid cuts, there's no ambiguity. 10 million people or so, maybe something around that range, are going to lose health insurance coverage, as well as about 4 million people lose Obamacare coverage. So, good luck. I don't know. Not good luck. I hope they fail.
You pass that bill. You pass that bill. You're handing the House to Democrats if there's a free and fair midterm election.
Yeah, but that's already going to happen. I mean, okay. I think whatever they do, I mean, just because of the way the midterms usually go, and Trump's unpopularity, which I think will continue, it's pretty much it. I would be shocked if Democrats don't take the House. So, the House might just say, well, look, you have certain members. I live in New York. Mike Lawler is, he wants to run for governor.
He's my congressman.
He's your congressman. He's going to be in serious trouble if he votes for this bill. And he already has voted for it. Which
he's in serious trouble now.
Yeah. So I think, look, if there's one consistent thing you can say about moderate Republicans, is they have spines of jelly. They always back down, and they always give in. And I don't know if Lawler will be any different, but that may be the end of his political career. And is he running for governor? Is he definitely doing that?
He has not. I don't think he's made it official yet. I think they're waiting for a few more weeks or even until the New York primaries.
I mean, I don't know why. It's 2026 in a blue state. Kathy Hochul is terrible, but good
luck. Who do you like for mayor of your city?
I mean, I hate them all. I mean, I really hate Cuomo. I really don't want to vote for him. But this Mamdani guy is just so bad that I might have no choice but to vote for Cuomo. I've been looking at all the other candidates, and none of them really speak to me. But the thought of Mamdani winning is so disturbing to me that I cannot stand Cuomo. Cannot stand him, and don't think he gives a shit about New York City. But I'm in a really tough spot here, like a lot of people are who don't like Mamdani, don't like Cuomo.
I hope Mamdani wins just because it'll upset you.
I mean, look, forget the fact that he's like a classic Jew hater. Put that all aside.
I don't know any.
Right?
I know nothing about the guy, really. I've seen his
He
ads.
is so inexperienced. He is so immature in his political views. And the fact that like every hipster dipshit who lives in Bushwick likes him or Greenpoint is like all the more reason not to like him. Those people have the political intelligence of fruit flies. So I am not. So it's like there's so many reasons not to like Mamdani, so many reasons, but there's also so many reasons to just like Andrew Cuomo because he's horrible. So it's a tough call.
Michael Cohen, so glad that you joined me today. I hope people go check out Truth and Consequences, your Substack right now.
And it is a great read.
You're still hanging tough on Twitter and doing great. I love your tweets. I shared. You're not on. Are you on Blue Sky? Yeah, you are.
I am, but I don't spend a lot of time.
I didn't see it because a tweet. You had a tweet. It was so fun that I screen grabbed it and shared it on Blue Sky. So
which one was that?
I don't know. I forget which one. But
okay. I've had some good ones recently.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon, bud.
Always a pleasure, Pete.
All right.
Thank you.
There he goes. Michael Cohen, everybody. Hope you like that. Go subscribe to Truth and Consequences right now. Tell him I sent you and follow him. He's actually still very active, as I said, on Twitter. Not so much elsewhere, but he's good there. And I like reading his takes because they're pretty original. Also very original, it's Colby Hall of Mediaite. I always like talking to Colby. I visit Mediaite every day. I get a lot of updates and news from them. And Colby is a really smart, thoughtful writer working in a crazy media atmosphere. He knows all the players. He's been covering it for a long time, media and politics. And so it's always great to catch up with him. Again, this is available to watch if you want to at youtube.com/standupwithpete. All right, here's our conversation. Colby Hall joins me now from Mediaite. I read everything that he writes, and I'm very happy when I get to talk to you. You've written a lot in the last week or so. A lot has happened. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's been, there's never shortage of crazy bullshit to talk about and write about. So, thank you for saying that. It's a nutty time, to say the least.
A lot of things get buried and we forget about them. I like the idea that a week after or even a couple days after in this news cycle, you can unpack something that's important to understand its impact and then kind of have a perspective on why it means, which is why I wanted to start with talking about what happened last week. I guess it were a few days ago, really, when ABC News Terry Moran put out a post on social media highly critical of Stephen Miller. Said some pretty specific, terrible things about the man's character or lack thereof. People probably read it. You have a piece at Mediaite titled "The Fake Outrage at ABC's Terry Moran Exposes How Dishonest Independent Media Can Be." Give me the summary here, the angle. I think this is an important issue to talk about.
Well, so I opened that piece by saying Terry Moran made a mistake by using really flowery language to say basically that Stephen Miller, his soul is nourished by hate, which is floral language for someone who's a traditional journalist, right? Yep. I think Stephen Miller probably is delighted by that because he loves playing the villain. And I don't think the mistake necessarily was Terry Moran being so kind of candid in his analysis. I think his mistake was that he borrowed a lot of trouble for his corporate media employer, who was forced into a corner and had to suspend him and under further review. The larger point that I made, though, was that there was this outrage, this pearl clutching by all these mostly right-wing commentators who saw that as their own confirmation bias that, broadcast journalists are biased. And the thought occurred to me that there's such a different standard. I get, yes, that there are opinion people, there's columnists, and they have the freedom to say whatever they want under the auspice of analysis. And journalists are supposed to be fact-based, truth-based, sort of arbiters. And, I think in a subjective postmodern world, those lines, those rules don't apply any longer. And it's infuriating that someone like Megyn Kelly, whose stock in trade is to basically say things that you're not supposed to say. She's very pro-Trump, very opinionated, she's the one that's calling for Terry Moran to be fired. And it's like she's playing the referee in a game, the rules of which she doesn't even abide by, right? I get that journalism was always supposed to be this pure reservoir of facts and truth. And right now it's being polluted by like toxic sewage from extremists on both sides. But in this instance, it's mostly people on the right. And I just feel like this weird bizarre line of what people can say and not say is outdated. It no longer makes sense. And also, by the way, journalists are losing the lucrative battle. It's not a business model that works anymore because no one wants to hear the facts. They just want the hot take. So I just felt that it was bizarre, and it really angered me that Terry Moran, who I don't know, and I don't even think he's that liberal. I think he's pretty libertarian, to be honest, was being called to be fired because he made a pretty dumb but small mistake.
I love the way you wrote this at Media. You said Moran got slapped down for violating journalistic standards of objectivity. Fair enough. There are journalists out there with thoughtful criticisms of his post who maintain good reputations for honesty themselves. But the most vocal critics of his tweet are people who have zero standards. They're not journalists. They're avatars, brands, outrage entrepreneurs. Their stock and trade is pumping out commentary far more unhinged than what Moran said without ever risking suspension, because no one can suspend you when you are your own boss. And I think that resonated with me. That's because that's where we're at. You go on to say something more, I think, really important points where you say this asymmetry is the core of the problem. Journalists are held to impossibly high standards of accountability, while the real drivers of disinformation and public rage skate by unchecked. The more, quote, independent media becomes, be it YouTube screamers, Substack polemicists, or social media flamethrowers, the more neutered traditional journalism looks by comparison, and the more public, understandably, tunes out the public. So great. We live in a time when ratings reward rage, and legacy outlets are increasingly viewed as both compromised and toothless. The people still trying to tell the truth are left hemmed in by the rules that were written for another era, on another platform, for another kind of audience. Those three kind of paragraphs right there more succinctly frame what has gone on with media in this transition than anything else. I don't know if anybody really cares, but I am so glad that you wrote that.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's frustrating. And I've never really called myself a journalist because I don't abide by those standards, right? I think there's something really capital J sort of journalistic school. I act like one, but I don't. I think Sean Hannity is always said journalism is dead, and he says that as a dig because he thinks that sort of everyone's biased. But I do believe, and I don't want to get too philosophical, but there was a time in my youth coming out of college where semiotics and deconstructionism was all like the rage, where meaning was ephemeral. Everyone had their own personal meaning. And I think now, 50, 60 years later after, it's true. Like, if we can't agree on truth and facts, then journalism will forever lose to the outrage merchants who appeal to the part of your brain that is anger, the amygdala. That
is the thing, though. I mean, you had a couple fun little nicknames for it and words for it, but I don't know. I can never. That's why I always feel like it's so impossible to not compromise my own kind of values and like pumping out little clips with outrageous Pete Dominick destroys Colby Hall because he didn't get dressed up for his live YouTube. That'll get people to watch. But I don't want to do that.
I mean, honestly, this is what we do at Mediate. So I do say that, we are part of the problem, although we try to do it responsibly. I mean, it was clear, for example, the cheap fake debate, right? It's being held up as a cudgel by the right, oh, you made fun of cheap fakes. Well, no, actually, it was clear to anyone that Trump, or rather Biden, he was old. He was stiffening. But those clips were mischaracterized unfairly. You didn't need to mischaracterize them, right? So it's tough to have a nuanced conversation about disinformation when, he's old. We should be having this conversation about how he shouldn't be running for office, and he looks confused often. But also, if he's walking towards paratroopers that just landed next to him off camera, you can't say that he wandered off because he didn't know where he was. Well, no, actually, he did know where he was. Right. So both of those things can be true. And unfortunately, we live in a, zazzy headline, grab your attention world that there's no room for nuance. in this sort of grab you by the lapels and like, this is the thing that happened and this is why you should be outraged or make fun of this thing that isn't entirely true.
You wrote a piece, "The Government We Deserve, Trump and Musk's Ugly Split is a perfect reflection of the current state of America." I mean, I really want to ask you and everybody else about this. And it's crazy because you've, written 5 pieces since, a few on what's happening in Los Angeles, of course. But, at the end of last week, we all stopped whatever we were doing, no matter what we were doing, to go to Twitter, even if you didn't have it anymore, and see what Elon Musk was about to say next. He nuked Trump with the Epstein tweet, and it got uglier from there. Talk to me about this piece and your thoughts just a few days later of what the big bad breakup over the big bad bill all means.
Well, I think I opened with something that I tell my kids, and that is play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? And the stupid game America played is we elected to powers of position megalomaniacal, thin-skinned assholes and who are unserious. And the prize that we win is a government that's run by unserious, thin-skinned attention whores, right? Like, and are we not entertained? Like, I was fascinated. Like, oh my God, Trump, Elon Musk said what? And I had a lot of smart friends who thought, like, is this real? Is this just political theater? And I'm like, yeah, of course it's real. I don't think this is kayfabe. However, in a week's time, we could learn that they're having, makeup dinner at Mar-a-Lago because nothing's real. Like nothing matters. But it reminded me of a sort of famous book by Neil Postman, Amusing Ourselves to Death, who basically said that when we treat news as entertainment, it treat news as content. It shows sort of a greater social decay, and that's precisely where we are. Like again. Self-awareness time. Media plays in this game a lot, and I'm fascinated by it. But you elect buffoons who their sort of most informative experience was participating in pro wrestling. You get a president who acts like a pro wrestler and talks shit, and you get a media ecosystem and an audience that sucks it up. And, it's that famous, I don't know if it's really Thomas Jefferson, he said this, people get the government they deserve. This is the government we deserve right now. Like, this isn't, this is who we are, right? And I don't think anyone is stepping back and saying, holy shit, we've lost the plot. Like, there are smart people who are outraged who can't believe this, but they're kind of old fuddy-duddies who are living in the past. Like, this is the net effect of social media and reality TV and political theater that's all about trash talking and has zero focus or attention or priority to governance. And those who do prioritize governance, they don't get reelected because they're not playing this game, or they're losing this game terribly. Look at the Democrats. They're in a mess, right? They're in disarray, proverbially, because they're trying to govern and they're not doing the game that is.
They can't play the game. I've argued that Democrats and progressive thinkers can't play the same game and should not be compared. It doesn't work. If you do the things that Republicans do, progressives won't like it. They'll be turned off by it. Those tactics and techniques don't work amongst a real pluralistic, ethnically diverse group of people, and they do work with a lot of Christian nationalists in red states.
David Pakman, I heard him do an interview on the media, which is left leaning, but it's really smart. And
David Pakman, a great show.
Is the sort of progressive YouTube personality. He's had great success. He summed it up really well. He's like, given the abortion rights, choice, reproductive rights debate, the argument on the right is, 3 words. It's like life begins at conception, right? Like, that's 4 words. The progressive rights-based position is it's a nuanced discussion based on these variables. And, like, the Democratic Party, to your point, is always trying to take a very situational, nuanced, and well-informed approach to these very complicated, complex issues. Yeah. And it's sadly why they often lose to the oversimplified sloganeering that, wants to make America great again. Who doesn't want America to be great again?
No, that's good examples. I feel like the other examples that have really illustrated this in our last couple of years have been COVID in general and trans anything. It's before, once they say whatever they say about a trans kid, you don't even get to say how you feel about it, because in that case, that conversation's already over.
I mean, we don't even get to, it's wild to watch it play out on our school board and try to react to it with, I guess you could call it nuance. I would just say a couple more words or say it a little bit differently. I'm not worried. I forget what, the most effective slogan. You could say just about anything, anti-trans, I said, but my response was, my daughters are not worried about trans girls in the bathroom. They're worried for them. Pretty simple. Makes sense, to people, but didn't matter. It doesn't matter. We are having a different conversation, which, as you just said, is so I just don't think we can do it. We can't win on these points, and our media is wildly different too. I mean, Trump last week said that Joe Biden had retweeted somebody that said Joe Biden had died and was a droid, and it barely made. If a Democrat did that or anything remotely like that, I mean, they wouldn't be taken.
Well, Pete Hegseth was in the hearings today, and his Signalgate thing, where he clearly shared top secret information about an attack on an enemy on an unsecure environment before the attack was made that put our soldiers at risk. Had that happened under the Biden administration, we would never have heard the end of it. And I don't even know that it came up in the hearings today. At least that which I saw. And part of it is we have very short attention spans. We get distracted by this, but I think the distractions, it's all, and again, this is where I have to look at the man in the mirror, to quote Michael Jackson, because I feel like playing a lead role in media, we fall for the distractions, and it's a really tough editorial conversation, like crazy shit that Trump says. You can't ignore it. But if it's just a fire hose, at what point? I mean, I like to think the pendulum will swing the other way, but I don't see yet how this course corrects. It seems like we're still really early in the bad part.
You have a really good take on just that at Mediaite. Trump's National Guard stunt in L.A. is pure political theater, and the media can't look away. Of course they can't. It's a car chase. It's a plane crashing. It's people in the streets fighting with police that will always be imminently getting ratings. It was great to watch Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC last night, though, call that out and go to a couple of undercovered, more important issues and do it in a way that I don't know what it means for his ratings. But most people can't do that. And this is, as you say, made for TV. But what is TV supposed to do other than send reporters to get shot by rubber bullets? How many reporters have been shot now?
Not enough. No.
Wow.
I don't know if have you seen the movie September 5?
Yeah, I just watched it.
Loved it. I saw it, and what I loved about it, it was a journalistic procedural, but they were literally sort of uncovering. You could see these individuals having thought bubbles about major journalistic ethical issues that we still struggle with today. And I was watching the riots, protest, whatever on CNN, and nothing was really happening, right? And it occurred to me that having these cameras and reporters on these protesters and cops / guardsmen, it was like the Heidegger principle, like the thing that you observing the thing changes the nature of the thing you're observing, right? And in this instance, almost every participant can claim some sort of principled position. Even the Trump administration can say, look, violent riots are not good, and we want law and order. I think they're instigating. But the protesters have a good point. The reporters have to cover it. And yet we're in this it's created this death spiral where we're just this political theater is making matters worse. None of this, and even the trash talking between Newsom, who I think is good to push back, but that's escalating to a degree that it almost loses the larger issue. It's not the riots. It's this authoritarian play that seems to be getting less discussion and is a much greater concern. Newsom's bringing that up than this if it bleeds, it leads conflict between rubber bullets from National Guardsmen towards reporters.
The reason why I think that that's almost a moot point is because in this case, cameras and journalists should be covering it as much as possible because you have a president who is lying about the facts on the ground in the most exaggerated, dishonest ways. He did this when he was president the last time at the George Floyd. Portland is burning down. I mean, L.A., anybody that is there, I mean, everybody that is there, it's a huge place, is saying, showing images of beautiful LA, peaceful LA, whatever, because this is really contained to just a couple of blocks around federal buildings specifically. And so you need cameras to contradict what Trump is saying. And by the way, even if he doesn't stop lying, people are now, it's so confusing. I got duped at one point. People are showing images of other places in the world at different times. Iraq in 2003 or Minnesota in 2020, and it's not LA, and people get misled. Ted Cruz, I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, tweeted a picture from the 2020 riots that was not from LA.
I don't think it was on purpose, but I don't think he cares, right? Because there's a dearth of critical thinking that are going to question that sort of stuff. But as an example of this, I think news outlets are correctly saying that this is mostly peaceful protests. But that doesn't preclude the fact that there are violence and there are riots and really bad things, looting that's happening, and that doesn't excuse that. Just because there's a peaceful protester, it shouldn't be called a rioter because of the actions of someone else that happened like 2 miles away.
I haven't seen, you just said riots.
There's a spectrum, and there's all these different examples. The media tends to cherry pick the examples that they want to prove their point, and that's an issue across the spectrum. I think the conservative side plays a little bit looser and faster, and as a result, get better ratings.
You said riots and looters. I don't think you could consider anything that I've seen riots. I don't know if there's been any reported of looting. If anything, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if anything, I feel like what we're seeing is the more police you put in the street, the more people are going to show up to try to protest them or to throw water bottles or whatever at them. They're drawing people out, and it looks to be on purpose. But I mean, whether it's police that could definitely be handling this on their own, much less the National Guard, which the governor didn't request,
I agree.
Or now the Marines, like for what? People are mad just by the fact that the National Guard is patrolling our streets. We don't like that. Americans don't like fatigues on the streets, even when cops dress up with their dumb
who
military.
else doesn't like that? The military doesn't like to be on the street. That's the last place that they want to be. And this is clearly a strong arm play. I would say to your point also, I agree that the addition of National Guard has escalated things. The point that I was trying to make in that piece that you mentioned is that the media presence, while necessary, also serves not as a cause of conflict, but a catalyst, right? Because I think, by reporting on it, it kind of makes it a bigger deal. And, there's a lot of people who watch a lot of TV. It's like, oh, that crazy thing is happening a block away. Let's go check it out. And so it tends to bring it. And I don't think that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just a thing, and that we should recognize phenomenon, even if it doesn't suit our narrative. It's just a thing. And I don't know that there's an easy solution. It would be great if grownups were in charge and decided to get away from the conflict, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
It's very hard. I feel it's hard to cover as journalists to follow as the public, because I could just think of, and you could, so many off the cuff things that simply didn't happen, and they weren't like a grain of truth. They didn't happen. Like they're eating cats and dogs, or that the city is on fire, or that any number of things that he says, that the National Guard came in and thanks to me, and they fixed everything when you rightly documented.
The city didn't burn down. He said today the city would have burned down if not for him. Like, dude, I get that's political hyperbole, but to your point, it's so baseless and so bereft of any facts or truth that it debases the national discourse. And the discourse has already been debased, right? Mm-hmm. And again, if you have a guy that doesn't abide by sort of standard accepted rules of engagement or even social contract, I wrote in a column a long time ago about, I think it was Tucker Carlson, like, you'll never win a debate with someone who's willing to lie through their teeth.
Right.
And that's why you can never, no matter what happens with the tariffs or LA or whatever issue, Trump will always claim that he won, even if it's just obviously clearly bullshit, right? And so you can't have a meaningful dialogue with someone who's just doesn't abide by the truth.
What do you make of Gavin Newsom's reaction and his kind of strategy? He's talking to everybody from local LA to the biggest YouTube to the networks. And I'd never seen him like this. I mean, he's an emotional guy. He's very performative. He's very articulate, but I mean, he's like, come on, arrest me. He's talking tough. He's seems like a tough guy. He seems like the right guy for the moment. What do you think, though? I fall for him. I do a little bit fall for him.
I do too. Like, I mean, there's a skeptical part of me that sort of loathes anyone that's so camera ready and strong jawed and ready for this. But I think at the end of the day, I net out.
I don't know. I get that. I get that. But that's the job.
No, right. And I mean, look, he's the starting quarterback of the Democrat Party in the California, state of California. I think time will tell. But my reaction initially is that he's pushing back. He's showing strength and he's calling bullshit. And he's saying, okay, do that thing that you're saying. Like, he's not rolling over. And I think that's very, in this much the same way Cory Booker, who's similar, I think, he's like sort of the East Coast equivalent. Because there's a little bit of like enjoying the moment, performative.
Yeah,
like
I think it's a good comparison.
Gavin Newsom and a microphone. But I think he's rising to the occasion. I think he's saying and doing the right stuff because people need to push back and hang a lantern on the fact that what the federal government is doing right now is really scary. It is a slippery slope. And if you just roll over and say like, okay, that's fine. Is he doing this as part of political ambitions? Maybe, but I think it's also, to his credit, a principled one. And it's a pretty easy principled position to take. I think he's got some other issues. I think California is a shit show that he should probably help try to clean up. But so far, I think he's been a good foil for Trump's crazy in this latest episode. But, talk to me in a week and we'll be talking about some other insane bullshit.
One thing we might be talking about, and I'll let you go on this because, it's coming up. This weekend, it's the president's birthday. It's like the 250th anniversary. It is the major protests planned, No King's Day. The Pope is going to be apparently giving a big speech. So, like, I don't know what you're going to be doing this weekend. I'm guessing you're going to have to cover all of this. But what do you make just simply of the military parade and, the kind of coverage it will get or not get? That imagery, I'm pretty caught up on that. Regular listeners and people, but I've been talking about this the past few days. I feel like that's I don't know who it's bad for. I don't know who it affects, but I don't think Americans, not only do we not like, uniformed military in the streets on patrol, we definitely were raised on movies and images from around the world, from China to Russia, Soviet Union to North Korea, of this type of military parade. I mean, they're going to have fucking tanks. And I was joking last night with listeners. I wonder if they'll have missiles. And then I read today, there's going to be missiles. Like missiles?
I think it could be really explosive. I kind of hope that it is. Honestly, like, we need a national movement. Like, we need, I don't know if it's like when even David Brooks is writing in the New York Times a couple months ago that we need like a national strike. David Brooks. Yep. Good for him. But it's not clear that anything has been effective. And, Rachel did a big thing on it last night's show. I hope that it becomes a peaceful thing. Trump already sort of threatened like any protest of the military will be a very big force. It could blow up. But you're right. I think it's a 70-30 issue. I think 70% of Americans will be like, this is what we see in the Kremlin. This is what we see in Tiananmen Square. This is not who we are. There's 30% of Americans who miss the whole we're a democracy portion of, social studies in school and just simply like that we look strong. And that's, I think, the concerning part. So I think it's going to be a big weekend. I hope it's peaceful. I think Trump's painting himself into this corner. Will it work out for him? I don't. The walls have been closing in on this dude forever. Yeah. So much that they're not really closing in. So the reports of his death or political death are
no, you're absolutely right. It was amazing though, and just the Schadenfreude of him stumbling up those stairs. Just.
I mean, but he's an old dude. He's 79. Like,
well, then Marco Rubio also stumbled up the stairs, and people stumble on the stairs.
I've never stumbled on the stairs. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're so
people make mistakes. Like this. Nobody's nerfect, as Ziggy taught me when I was a kid. So it's it does feel like this administration is seeing their poll numbers shift, and they are looking for things to distract us with. And the honeymoon is over, I think. And hopefully we can get through this in a way that doesn't do serious damage.
Well, we'll see. If that bill passes, it's going to be some very serious damage to people's lives. But we'll talk about that soon, because that's going to happen within the next few weeks, potentially. We'll see what happens. Colby Hall writes great things, interesting things, thoughtful things at Mediaite. If you're not following him on all the social medias and reading Mediaite, you're missing out. I go there every day and read your stuff.
Thanks for being so kind. I appreciate you saying nice words. I'll pay you the $20 later.
I would just like to meet you in person and have a drink. We've been talking for a couple of years now. We've never actually met, so we should do that.
I'm down. Well, we have some of the same people in common. I saw you on an old CNN clip that randomly came up on my feed. I was like, there's Pete. So it was good to see.
That must have been a while ago. They haven't invited me back. I was the farm team. I was the experimental part of the panel for that Abby Phillips show. I've known Abby and for that CNN show, and they were having less credible people like myself on, to be fair. I mean, they still have a lot of hacks and less credible, but now it's like...
It's a hot show right now.
Now it's like...
I mean, it's compelling TV, but it's a return of Crossfire. And it's compelling because you hear different voices, but it's also often political theater. It's not real discourse, it's fights.
Yeah. Do you know that it gets like good ratings or better ratings than other shows?
Yeah, it's kind of the outlier of CNN's ratings trends right now. It's the one show that's sort of like trending upwards. Which,
people love it.
It speaks volumes. And I actually think it suits Abby really well because she's so calm. When she was hosting her own show, that calmness didn't necessarily convey.
Yeah.
But in that crazy, over-the-top environment, it brings out her strengths in a really good way because she's great. She's really smart. And she's a calming presence for Touré and Scott Jennings to come to blows.
Yeah. Thanks, bud. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon, and we will meet up soon. Thank you very much for doing this. And thanks, everybody, for stopping by. And that's it. That's it. We're out. All right. There you go. Colby Hall. Wasn't he great? I thought that was very thoughtful and helpful, and I really enjoyed talking with both him and Michael Cohen. A 2-for on today. I can't believe I used to do this every day for like almost 3 years. I feel like 2 guests a day. It's hard, but I love doing it. It's a lot of work, a lot of sitting in front of the computer, but I absolutely love doing it and trying not to get burnt out. Obviously, I can't do it without your support. So if you like the news headlines, clips, and the guests that I put together, the interviews, the work that I'm doing each and every day, you could pay more than $5 if you want, which many of you do, and I'm so grateful for it. But if you're not paying anything, please sign up right now for a paid subscription, patreon.com/Pete Dominick. Also, go sign up for John Carroll's new album. Go download his new album right now, johncarroll.org, and that is all I've got for you. I will talk to you tomorrow. Practice self-care. Take care of your mental health. Do whatever you need to do to keep sane and take care of you and yours. If you've got to disengage, take breaks, get outside, exercise, do cardio, and get out into nature, which I'm going to do right now. Headed into the woods with Zats for our weekly hike with our dogs. I love it, and I hope that you do something like it yourself. Okay, that's it. Bye-bye.
Off of your